Good afternoon, and welcome to my very first podcast. My name is John Sarzosa Jr., and this is basically my opportunity to tell my story. We just finished up with the month of March, which is Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month, and so I've been out there. Doing everything from social media posts to magazine interview, to some online interviews, the Faces of Blue with the Colon Cancer Coalition, and some news media interviews as well on KARE 11 News and WCCO TV mid morning. Didn't get the opportunity to really tell my story. It was more about just bringing awareness to colorectal cancer and really pushing the whole idea of getting screened. They changed the age requirement from 50 down to 45. And so we're just basically, because it was Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month, just really trying to get people to get proactive and get out there and get screened for colon cancer, and was doing as much as I possibly could out there to help out. So, but most of those, from the interviews and being on TV and radio and the magazine stuff and the online interview. I mean, most of the time, you just don't get very much time. You get like maybe 3-4 minutes to have a discussion, and it usually centered around getting screened. And so today's podcast will basically be my opportunity to really tell my story, talk a little bit about what I'm planning for 2019, and yeah, that's pretty much about it. So basically, my story starts out in 2016. I didn't really have too many symptoms at all to talk about, but my wife and I started to do some walking around our block. We built a house in southern Minnesota, and just trying to get out and do some walking and stuff like that. And I noticed I was getting some severe abdominal cramps when walking longer distances and stuff. And so I just thought I just chalked it up as being out of shape. I mean, I didn't really think much about it. And not too much longer after that, I started having rectal bleeding, so blood in the stool, and that was more than concerning. So I decided I'm going to go into the ER, because we don't, at the time anyway, I didn't know if we had a urgent care in town. So I just went to the local hospital and into the ER, and was basically like everybody else that I know of. It was misdiagnosed with having internal hemorrhoids, and was told that it's no big deal. People get hemorrhoids, and so I chalked it up to that. They're the experts, so I thought, yeah, great, it's no big deal, nothing to be worried about. People get hemorrhoids, and something you got to deal with. So I went another entire year with rectal bleeding and the cramps and stuff like that. And I think it was July 3rd. It was right before the 4th of July, 2017, where I thought I was having a heart attack. And just a quick mention that back in 2012, I did have a massive heart attack, had heart surgery, and I now have 3 stents in my right coronary artery. And so I thought I was having another heart attack, and so I went in again to the ER, and they ran all their tests and said, nope, you're not having a massive heart attack, and there's something else going on. They didn't know what it was, but I was concerned enough where I just said, you know what, I had a heart attack in 2012. I do follow up quite frequently with my cardiologist. So I'll just make an appointment and go and see them. And so they cut me loose from the ER, and I followed up the next day with my cardiologist, and he wanted to do an angiogram. And that's basically where they go up in your groin, up into your chest cavity, and into your heart, and take a look at the arteries. And I was totally fine with that. My only concern was, again, because of the rectal bleeding, I said, my only question is, will I bleed to death? And his question to me was, what the hell are you talking about? I said, well, I was told a year ago that I've got internal hemorrhoids, and so I've been bleeding, and so that would be my only concern. And so he said, well, yeah, I mean, if you end up going on Plavix, then yeah, once you start bleeding, you don't stop bleeding. So before we did anything, he wanted to have me meet with, he said he was going to have a GI guy take a look at me. And so he came in, and I told him what my symptoms were, and he scheduled a round of tests and some scans of my abdominal cavity and my pelvic region. And right away he came back in saying that there was something horribly wrong, and that he was seeing masses around my rectal column and needed to do an emergency colonoscopy. And to him it looked like cancer, like there was a massive tumor there. And so naturally I was extremely concerned. That was not something I wanted to hear or was even expecting to hear. And so, I did the horrible prep that night in the hospital, and because I was admitted right away. And next morning they did an emergency colonoscopy, and then they woke me up, and it was pretty bad. So I was told that there was a tumor that basically was enveloping my entire rectal column, was about a centimeter from meeting up on the other side. And on the inner side here had punctured a hole right through my rectum, and that's where the bleeding was coming from. So he was saying that it's not an internal hemorrhoid, it's the tumor that's punched a hole through your rectum, and that's where the bleeding is coming from. So he said it was really bad. It was a very large tumor, and all of my lymph nodes were swollen. So the initial comment to me was, you're probably a mid to late stage 4 colorectal cancer patient, and the best they could give me was 6 to 9 months to live if I chose to do nothing. And I was just in shock, absolute shock. My wife was devastated. My family was devastated. I was just shocked. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. I was just, what do you do? And so the hospital I go to has a cancer center attached to it. And so they hooked me up right away with an oncologist and a colorectal cancer surgeon. Because I told them, I said, I got reasons to live. I'm not going to do nothing. So, I'll do whatever it takes. And so, they hooked me up with an oncologist and a colorectal cancer surgeon. And the next day I met with the oncologist, who gave me basically 3 options to choose from. And I chose the harshest one. And that was because it had the highest success rate. It had a 91% success rate of beating it and not having recurrence. So I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. And let me step back just a second. I mean, the first thing I said to the surgeon was, get it out of me, cut it out of me, get this shit out of me, and let's be done with it. And but I was told by the surgeon that it doesn't work that way. The tumor was way too large. There's no way he could operate on me in the condition I was in, and said that I would need to do daily chemotherapy and radiation treatments to shrink the tumor up so he could have a successful extraction. And so, yeah, when I met with the oncologist then, and I picked the most harshest option, that was all fine and dandy, but like she said, it comes at a price. And that price could very well be massive nerve damage, and not to mention all these other side effects, some neurological. I mean, there's all kinds of side effects that come along with this option. But I didn't care. I mean, it's you do what you got to do, right? I mean, for me, I didn't care about all that kind of stuff, the side effects. And I know a lot of people, not everybody, but I know some people who just can't handle pain and don't want to do what's necessary to get things taken care of. And so, but I don't care about that stuff. And so I'm like, I don't care if I got to live in pain the rest of my life. I don't care as long as I'm still around. I mean, what's the alternative? The alternative is death. So, you do what you got to do. And so that option was 6 weeks of pre-surgical and daily chemotherapy and radiation treatments to shrink the tumor. And then I would heal up whatever for 6 to 8 weeks. And then they would do robotic LAR surgery, LAR standing for the lower anterior resection surgery. And it's a robotic procedure. And then after that, depending on how things go, would determine what the post-surgical treatment plan would look like. So I did the 6 weeks of pre-surgical daily chemotherapy and radiation treatments. And the oral pill is what I had, the Xeloda, capecitabine. It's an oral chemotherapy that I took in the morning and in the evening. And then, of course, the radiation treatments. And so that was September and October of 2017. And then in November, I did the surgery. The surgery went great. He was able to have a successful extraction and got everything out of me. Spent some extra time hanging out in there and making sure everything looked great. Also took out 21 lymph nodes. Unfortunately, when the lab results came back on the lymph nodes, there were 2 lymph nodes that did not get fried in the process and still had active cancer in them. And so, a surgeon can't see invisible cancer cells floating around in you. And so the plan I chose to go with, again, was the harshest one, which was 6 months of post-surgical chemotherapy, consisting of the capecitabine, or the Xeloda again, and oxaliplatin, which is a heavy metal. From what I understand, gets shaved into a powder and put into water and jammed into your veins. So it's a horrid chemotherapy solution that not only kills the cancer cells, which is great, but it also kills everything else. And so I did have a lot of bad side effects, the worst of which being the neuropathy, or the massive nerve damage in my hands, my tongue, my feet, some neurological issues there as well. And so, we're 6 months out from that right now, of being done and being declared cancer-free. So my hands are about 80% back to what they used to be. My tongue is good to go again. I can taste food again, and I don't have the cold sensitivity like I did before. But my feet have not gotten any better. They're still extremely painful. The best way I can describe it is kind of like what people have pain in their. It's kind of like pins and needles. Is the best way I can describe it. But probably the worst part of it, I mean, initially it was like I couldn't feel my feet, or almost couldn't feel my feet. And so we had to stop after the 5th infusion. I made it about 5 sessions, and then we stopped the oxaliplatin after 5 sessions, and I continued on with the Xeloda to finish that stuff off. And then everything was done in June of 2018. And and then I kind of healed up from all that stuff. And then in August, at the end of August, so August 28th of 2018, I ended up doing the ileostomy reversal surgery. So when I had my initial surgery to take out the tumor and the lymph nodes and all that, I was left with what's called a stoma, where your small intestine meet up with your large intestine, and that was sticking out, what's called a stoma, out of my abdominal cavity. And so I basically was crapping into a bag. They told me it was it's a temporary ileostomy, and it'll get me through the 6 months of post-surgical chemotherapy. And then when you're all done with that and you've healed up from it, then we put you all back together again, and then you start going to the bathroom like a normal human again. So that's what I did. So at the end of August 2018, I went in and had the reversal surgery done, and they put me all back together again. And I had to potty train myself basically all over again. And that was not fun. That sucked. And it was kind of funny. I told my surgeon that, if things didn't go well during the surgery, don't worry about it. I have no problem with an ileostomy the rest of my life. And we had a good laugh about that. He did say that the number one complaint by everybody is having that reversal surgery, because you have no idea how phenomenal it is not to use the bathroom, or not to have to sit on a toilet, for a guy anyway. It was the best thing ever. So the worst thing ever was, having the reversal surgery and having to learn how to use the bathroom all over again, and not having certain parts of your innards to help in that process. So, it took me about a good month, about 4 to 6 weeks to learn how to use the bathroom again, and was not fun. The one thing I will say, though, especially for anybody who's listening who's facing a ileostomy or reversal surgery, like I tell everybody else, everyone's different, and I've read about, I've seen postings from people who basically, it went well and went awesome, and they absolutely hated having an ileostomy, to people like me who loved having the ileostomy and hated going back to the way things used to be. So, but at any rate, it was planned all along that it was a temporary thing, and it's just another thing I had to deal with. So, yeah, it was, no big deal. So after that, I was declared cancer-free. I'd completed the entire treatment process, and and that was it. And I still have, even though my hands are 80% to what they used to be, and my tongue is back to normal, my feet have not gotten better. So I'm hoping here, and they've told me that it takes about a good 12 to 18 months for things to get better. And if you get to that 12 to 18 months and nothing's changed, then chances are you're going to have the neuropathy the rest of your life. But again, to me, it's not about that. And you know what? I really don't care. It sucks, and I need a cane to walk. It absolutely helps. It takes the pressure off my feet, helps me walk a lot better. But again, it's not about that. It's about, my ultimate goal was to make it, to beat cancer, and to be around for my wife, be around for my family, and to have a future. And again, the alternative was death. And so I did what I had to do, and it was hell going through it, but I knew that if I could get through that first year and a half, with all the chemotherapy and the radiation treatments and the surgeries, and if I could make it, that's all I cared about. That I wouldn't care about the pain, and it's not about that. It's about making it. So, and I made it. So that was the most important thing. And yeah, I got to deal with the side effects and all that. But whatever. Every morning I wake up, it's a blessing. I wake up and take a look outside and just to know that I'm alive. I can't tell you how extremely grateful I am to be alive. So, so here I am 6-7 months out now from that, and I'm doing everything I can to help bring awareness to colorectal cancer. It's the second leading cause of cancer death in America. And I was shocked, kind of surprised that when I first got diagnosed, I thought there was going to be a lot of resources available to me, especially with the cancer center being attached to the hospital. And, I met up with the cancer center and found out that they really couldn't help me. They had no information. They had no materials. They had no support groups. They had nothing. And I couldn't believe it. I'm just like, are you serious? Like, this is a cancer center. I mean, but what I learned was that, basically the stuff they had, the information they had, the materials they had, the support groups that they had, all that stuff centered around a couple of cancers, and that was breast cancer and some of the blood cancers, so the leukemia and stuff like that. People who had, any other kind of cancer, whether it was, prostate cancer or colon cancer or rectal cancer or brain cancer, if you had a tumor in your brain. I mean, they had none of that. And so I couldn't understand, given the amount of colorectal cancer surgeries they do on a daily basis at that hospital, that they would have absolutely no information. I mean, I got some information from like my surgical team. So from like my surgeons and nurse gave me some information that I could read about. Because I had the temporary ileostomy right after my surgery, there was a stoma nurse that came in and talked to me and gave me some information and helped me to understand how to go about changing the bag that I'd be going to the bathroom in. And she, gave me a couple of pointers as far as, online, there's maybe some resources, whatever. But I couldn't understand how there could be nothing available to me. And of course, I don't live in the Twin Cities. I built a house in southern Minnesota, so I'm out in the middle of, the country, and there's nothing down here. So I thought for sure in Minneapolis there would be something. And I was given nothing. So I was on my own, literally. And other than my family, I had nothing. So I did some searching online, came across a few opportunities and resources, like support groups and stuff like that, some online stuff, and I joined them right away. But just looking through that stuff, I could tell there was not much in the way of participation there. I was seeing posts that were 2-3 months old, with no replies, no help, no nothing. So, I was like, this isn't going to do it. This is not going to help me in any way. So other than maybe some historical information that I could try to flush through. So, I really couldn't find much. I called the American Cancer Society. I was told the same thing. They had no information they could send me. The most of the stuff they had to do with, breast cancer and some of the other ones that I mentioned, like leukemia and stuff like that. So, they basically said the same thing. You're pretty much on your own. You're just going to have to deal with it, basically on your own. And they said the same thing. Maybe you can find something online or whatever. And so I don't know. I think I was maybe into my 3rd, 4th week into my chemotherapy and radiation treatments when one of the gals had mentioned to me that, I should really check out Facebook. And I'm like, I knew there were groups and stuff like that, but I didn't even think about looking for, cancer support groups on Facebook. So I checked it out, and sure enough, there was some resources there that I wish I would have known earlier, but I believe one of the groups was called Sherry's Colorectal Cancer Support Group or something like that. And then I was contacted. I'm trying to remember who it was now. I don't remember off the top of my head what her name was. Somebody contacted me from the Colorectal Cancer Coalition in Minneapolis. And I had gotten together with them for coffee, and they had come across me. I'm online everywhere, and by everywhere I mean I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all through my entire journey, I was posting things on there in the hopes to helping somebody. Since I couldn't find any help for me, I thought, well, maybe everything that I'm going through, I can start putting stuff out there so that other people like me could find me or get some value out of the posts that I was putting up. So I met with them, and they had mentioned to me that they do a lot of outreach and a lot of events, and they do some media, health segment stuff on the news and things like that. And was wondering if I'd be willing to help out on that. Apparently, most of the people out there who are like me, who are talking about it and all that, posting information, all that kind of stuff, are mainly female. And so it's pretty rare to come across a guy who's out there doing it. And so they reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested in helping out on some of the media stuff, because a lot of the interviews over the years that they've done has been with women. And so I said, yeah, I'll do whatever I can to help out, and just let me know. I live in southern Minnesota, so give me a heads up. I can't be there in like 10 minutes. So, and so they did. They reached out to me. We had the month of March that we just got done with here. The month of March was coming up, and so they reached out to me and asked me if I'd be willing to do a couple of the TV interviews. One was with Cara Levin, and the other one was with WCCO. So NBC was the first one, CBS on the other one. And so I agreed to do that, and I met with them and did that. I also did a spot or an interview with, they have a website, and they have a segment in there called Faces of Blue. And so I met with one of their people to do an interview for that. So I just been doing as much as I can to help out wherever I can. And the whole idea of the podcast, doing a podcast, came from all that, because I wanted to. I'm not really a writer. I don't even know how to say it. I'm not a writer. I can get in front of groups. I can get in front of TVs, or I can get in front of the camera. I can get in front of a group of 1,000 people. I can do all that kind of stuff. It doesn't bother me at all. But when it comes to I want to write a book, but I'm not a writer. I can't. I know what I want to say. I can't get it in paper form for some reason. That's just a weakness of mine. I know what I want to say. I just can't put it down. I can't write it out. And so, I've owned 3 businesses in the past, and when it came to marketing, it was the same thing. I knew what I wanted to say. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it on the web. I couldn't do it in documentation, that kind of stuff. So I always farmed that stuff out. I'd always, hire or outsource the marketing stuff. And so I got by. But the whole idea with the podcast was that, I couldn't, start up a blog and do a weekly blog and, do that kind of stuff. And so, since when I was going through all of my whole cancer journey, I was posting things online. And that's kind of where the idea of the podcast came along. I was like, I can post things online and put pictures and, put half naked pictures of myself running around with a ostomy bag and got no problem doing that. So, but I just can't write the stuff down. So I, decided, maybe I could do some YouTube videos, or because I did find some value there on when it came to the ostomy supplies and things like that. I checked out YouTube and found that there were some people like me who were, doing videos on changing their ostomy bag, or going, talking about how they were, getting through the whole cancer journey. So I thought, all right, I can do that. I'll do what I can. And so I invested in getting the equipment necessary, from everything from the video to the audio equipment to the microphones to the podcast recording console to the software to the microphones, everything. So I figured, well, all right, I'll do that. And so that's where the whole idea came from. So I plan on doing a weekly post, if you will, a weekly video, and that I'll put up on YouTube, and then a weekly podcast. I plan on having guests. So I'm hoping to get other cancer patients, caretakers, caregivers, stoma nurses, physicians, colorectal surgeons. There's an awful lot of information that I did not have available to me, or if it was available, I had no idea where to get it. And there's just so much to talk about. There's so many topics that can be covered, whether it's from the diagnosis to what kind of cancer is it? Is it just a lifestyle, or is it hereditary, or there's topics about the ostomy, the ileostomy, talking about stomas and different kinds of bags, and different kinds of chemotherapy options, different kinds of radiation treatments, different options for surgeries. I mean, so there's so much information. There's just a ton of things that I'm sure a lot of people like me who are just told out of the blue that, oh, by the way, you've got colorectal cancer. I just don't want other people to have to go through what I went through, being told, well, you're on your own. Luckily for me, as it turned out, instead of being a stage 4 colorectal patient, I ended up being reclassified or restaged to being a stage 3C, because my lymph nodes were infected. It had not yet made the jump to my kidneys, to my liver, to my lungs. So thankfully, that we caught it in time, and so I was reclassified as stage 3C. However, I don't want other people to have to go through what I went through, in the sense of not having information available, not knowing who to turn to, not knowing anything. And so I thought, since I'm willing to do whatever, to help out wherever I can, that would be in my mind, a great way to start out, is just doing these weekly podcasts that somebody like me who's going through what I went through can listen in and get some ideas and get some information. There's still a lot of information online, and I can cover that kind of stuff and tell people where to go, where to look, how to get the support that they need. There's a lot of people out there who, didn't even have what I had, which was the only thing I really had was my family. I had my wife and my dad, who retired recently and moved in to help out with myself and Teresa. My wife Teresa is disabled, and so he helps her a lot with going to doctor appointments, things like that. And he was there for me to take me to all my chemotherapy and radiation treatments and to my surgeries and stuff like that. He's just one of those caregiver kind of guys, and but there's a lot of people out there who don't even have that. I experienced seeing people who would get on a bus and go down to the cancer center to, go through their chemotherapy session, and then have to walk in winter, which had to have been excruciating because it was painful as hell for me to walk just to my damn car. To have to go out and sit around, wait for a bus, and take a bus home, and have nobody waiting for you at home. And I don't know how they do it, and not have the support structure in place. I don't know. I mean, they're tougher than I am, apparently. But at any rate, so there's a lot of things to talk about, a lot of things that I can cover that could be helpful to somebody. So if you're watching this video podcast, give it a thumbs up, like it if you find this would be valuable, or if you think this is a good thing. Subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell icon there, the notification, so that you get notified with each posting. And like I say, I'm going to try to do this weekly and put out as much information as I can, and have on guests. I want to be able to provide value, whether you're a patient, whether you're a family member or a caregiver, and you're just looking for information or whatever. I just want it to be valuable information that you can use during that whole journey. And if you have any comments, put the comments. I'm open to constructive criticism. I'm open to suggestions, ideas, whatever. So put your comments down below, and I'll also be posting the video podcast on Instagram. I got some great, I got tremendous value out of Instagram, which kind of sounds goofy, but there are a lot of people on Instagram who are going through cancer, and I met a lot of people online who are going through the same thing that I was going through, and we were posting pictures of our ileostomies and all kinds of different pictures of the whole journey. But so I found it a great value. So Instagram, Facebook, and on YouTube is where I'll be posting the video podcast, and then I'll also be just putting the podcast out there through iTunes and some of the other sources out there. And that's about it. Thanks again for tuning in and checking out my video on this. And I hope you find some value in it. And I appreciate any comments that you have. And look forward to doing this. And hope to see you real soon. Take care.